Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, taking a topic deep dive and having a good time while doing it. Before we get started today, Jesse, what's going on? You're on Saxa. Good to see you. Before we get started today, just take care of some housekeeping here. You guys should know by now that I send a daily free email newsletter out, and you can go, the link is always in the description, but you can go to masterchimletter.com. It'll bring you to the opt-in page. I've been doing that for, almost 10 years. Is it almost 10 years? Is it over 10 years? It might be over 10 years at this point. But it's definitely one of my favorite, daily rituals. And the big following that I have in the emails is something that I appreciate and always like, getting the feedback from you guys that are on there. So if you are not getting those emails, definitely please do it. I mean, if it was up to me, maybe I shouldn't frame it that way. But let me say, in a perfect world, I would be able to do this every single day. It's just not significant enough in terms of return on investment for me to do a live video every day. There was a point where I wanted to be popular on YouTube because I thought that was the goal that was congruent with my larger goals. But I've since educated myself to the point where I realized that's not going to be a thing. I'm a little bit too controversial. I'm a little bit, I don't play nice. I don't play within the lines. And so I'm always going to be vulnerable to being shadow banned, canceled, demonetized, etc. So in order to make this model work, I would have to sort of negotiate those standards, and I'm not willing to do that. So I do this once a week show. I make sure I stay connected with you guys. I enjoy doing these videos, but the emails is where I really feel like so I'm the one in control of the reins, So if you're not getting the emails, go to masterchimletter.com and sign up. And that is that. All right, who else we got here? Aaron, what's going on, darling? Jamie, what's up, brother man? Good to see you. Magoo is in the building. What's up, Magoo? Good to see you, brother. All right, so let's get into today's topic, the power of external apathy. The power of external apathy. I'm somebody who, as a young man was very, very emotional and undisciplined while being emotional. I would say that everybody's to some extent emotional. It's really just a relationship with that emotion and their actions that we sort of tend to notice and observe. With me as a younger man, I was a maniac. I was short man complex, chip on the shoulder, any other, sayings that, you could think of probably applied to me. I was somebody that was a loose cannon. One awkward interaction and I was swinging. And, as a teenager, I had to learn how to control that to some extent. Being locked up as a teenager certainly helped. Let's not get it twisted. I was there for like 2 months, a little over 2 months. So it's not like I did hard time or anything, but having panic attacks as a 17-year-old, in a however small a cell that I was in, certainly will show you some shit about yourself. So I recall back then that I needed to change what it is that I was doing. The problem was, the difficulty, the obstacle that I was facing at the time was that I had all of this fire. I had all of this fire that manifested itself in the form of rage. I didn't really know how to harness it, and I would say that, in some instances, I was very well liked, well loved in some circles, appreciated, respected. In others, it was the exact opposite. And it didn't take long for me to figure out that one of the things I had to pay attention to was what eventually became my understanding of tribe, specifically the tribal wall. Who's on the outside of that wall? Who's on the inside of that wall? What does that say with how I conduct myself? In TRIBALNOMICS, my book, link in the description, I talk about how, there are in-tribe benefits. There are benefits that people who are within the wall of your tribe have access to. that people outside the wall of your tribe should not. I talk about how people, some of their missions is to sort of not commit themselves to being inside that tribal wall while still getting access to those benefits. I think that, as we become more responsible, more aware of our responsibilities, more aware of how our actions determine the circumstances in which we live, I think we start to realize that, yeah, I should probably add a little bit of priority to some people over others where resources are concerned. And I think, as I've developed a more almost codified perspective on a lot of these dynamics, I found the need to sort of add labels to certain characteristics, to certain phenomena, to certain dynamics that, tend to make people feel uncomfortable. Today is one such label. So external apathy. Now, if we're looking at the definition of apathy, let me look it up real quick. Apathy. Lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern, right? That's the Oxford Dictionary definition. Lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. I like apathy as sort of a stronger version or maybe purer version of indifference, right? I don't give a fuck either way. Is it indifference? And apathy is that sort of position devoid of any real emotion, any emotional investment or vulnerability. When I talk about external apathy, then, well, what does that condition create? What does it do to change the definition of apathy? And for our purposes here, external apathy refers to apathy outside of the tribal wall. So immediately, looking at, people, some people may hear that and some, initial pushbacks like, oh, does this mean we're not supposed to care for strangers? Well, yes and no. How's that for a cop-out? Yes and no. Yes, in that who we are as an individual. Sometimes we can't stand idly by and expose ourselves to certain things happening that we feel that we have control over in a way that we'll be able to sort of sleep at night as a result, or afterward, I should say. Sometimes we do things that benefit other people outside of our tribe, just because of who we are and who we need to be to maintain that. We have the phrase, oh, I couldn't live with myself if I allowed this to happen, or I could do that, but then I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, and all of these sayings are really referring to an individual's relationship with what they themselves need. So now we compare that idea to my definition of external apathy, and it starts to get a little uncomfortable for some. It's like, well, I'm basically saying that there should not be an emotional drive in how we handle other people outside of our tribe. There should not be, and outside of our tribe, to be honest, let me add an addendum to that definition. It's really outside of alliance, right? Because sometimes this gets a little nebulous in the eyes of people who are not used to seeing my stuff. But tribe is basically a group of allies that one produces or engages their own legacy, right? So the difference between an alliance and a tribe is the tribe is connected to legacy, where alliance is really just a mutualistic, one-to-one or one-to-many alliance or connection that allows each to benefit in some synergistic way. I'm a member of my gym that I work out in, right? And I pay every month, and we all go there, the people who attend the gym, and we have that in common, and everybody has a sort of alliance built around that mutualistic benefit. However, that's not to be conflated with people who are connected to my children, people who are connected more generationally, right? So a little bit of a semantic, distinction to make, but the idea of it is, if we are dealing with somebody outside of our alliances, then there should be an apathetic perspective. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the definition. Apathy, lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. Interest. Should we be interested in strangers or the goings on of the disconnected? And I would say only in so much or insofar that it relates to something that may benefit me. I am only going to be interested in things that I think are going to make me stronger. Now, we could say, well, that's not right. That's pretty selfish. I'm not saying this is even a conscious decision. I would say that all of us do this to some extent. There is always that lens of self that we are sort of overlaying on our observations to add context. Why is this interesting to me? Because it's interesting to me, right? So, aside from interest, the definition also gave enthusiasm, excitement, energy. I always talk about, wanting to have a sort of a fire that burns, right? I use a lot of fire metaphors, forging and being fired up and having an energy guy and the squad goals program that I made years ago. Like all of these things are relevant to trying to pursue whatever our goals happen to be. However, if we're talking about enthusiasm for people who are disconnected, I would ask, what is the return on the investment of such energy? We want to be enthusiastic about things that ultimately are a good idea. Well, the whole idea of something being good means that it's generating an outcome, or there is a context of morality, of virtue, before we say something good. Well, this is good. Well, what is it good for? Well, what designates it as good? And I would say because it is in line and in pursuit of a better outcome or a productive outcome, successful outcome for the mission of the tribe. So if somebody's a good guy, that means if he's connected to you in an alliance, he's somebody who's going to pursue mission. If somebody's a bad guy, it's like, yeah, he's probably not somebody you want to build an alliance with because he's probably not going to pursue mission, right? So these things, all these words have values that we really need, or I would say we'd benefit greatly from considering the dynamic between them, right? So we went over interest, enthusiasm, now concern. Why should we have a lack of concern for people outside of alliance, right? The disconnected. Again, very similar to interest, I'm going to pay attention to things and be concerned about things if they are related to me, if they're related to my tribe, if they're related to alliances that I have, my allies. There's always going to be that context. In philosophy, you'll have different schools of thought that sort of run the gamut of we should be worshiping a god to nothing matters, the more nihilistic thing, and everybody has this very universal broad brush that they want to just overlay on top of everything. And I've never really connected with a lot of those universal type perspectives because I just don't think that is reflective of what life in the real world actually is. I think one of the sort of decoder rings of so much of the philosophy that'll wind up making it work, if it's workable, is the perspective of tribe, the context of tribe. Who are you? Who are you connected to? Who do you care about? Who do you invest in? Do you care about people that you don't invest in? Do you invest in people you don't care about? Are you wasting resources? Are you not even generating resources? Or are you generating and investing resources? But then who are you investing it in? Right? All of these dynamics give a man plenty to sit down and contemplate and figure out when talking about the priorities of his life. We have a very, fast-paced society these days. And in this fast pace of society, one of the things that occurs is there is this sort of perennial distraction in the form of overstimulation. We're constantly being stimulated in disconnected ways. I was talking to my mastermind group this morning, and I was using the analogy or the example, not analogy, but the example of scrolling on like Reels, right, on Instagram. You can go from a funny video to a kid, playing with his dog, to somebody getting shot in South America, to some girl, doing the trivia test, to like these completely disconnected videos, content. And what does that say for us that we are now engaging in stimulation that doesn't build upon anything? If anything, if nothing else, it actually prevents anything from being built. Right? It's sort of like, if I've been married over 20 years. Well, let's just say that for 20 years, I had a different wife every night. There might be some novelty to that in the beginning. Let's not get it twisted. But after a while, it winds up becoming repetitive. And the reason why it being repetitive will be a bad thing is because there is no depth that is possible if the extent of the relationship is some unnatural 24-hour framework. I'll give you the example of the movie. We're talking about that this morning, Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day, and you can go, and there are people who have all these ideas, these theories about how long the Bill Murray character was trapped in that time loop. Some people say 10 years, some people say 100 years, some people 10,000 years, and everybody has an argument for it. Whatever it was, though, the observation of relevance for this conversation is Bill Murray had to master the day, right? His character had to master the day that he was trapped in, or it would become so repetitive that he'd go crazy. And that's the thing about people. We'll go crazy if we don't, add this sort of variety, right? I call it balance, right? So I have, everybody's got their thing. I got my 4 purpose drives. It's written on my board here. And balance is one of them. Balance, recognition, belonging, transcendence. Balance is the relationship between movement and stability, right? And we need some things to be certain. We need some things to be uncertain. And the balance between them allows us to stay stimulated while not losing our identity. Well, getting to the point where we're never doing anything and building upon itself, or let me rephrase that. There's like 3 thoughts into one. You look at society today, we are so overstimulated. You could spend a lot of time without building any momentum. An example or a phrase that I would say is there are a lot of people these days that are exhausted at the end of the day, and they've accomplished absolutely nothing. When I talk to entrepreneurs in my coaching programs, one of the things I talk to them about is the distinction between, working on your business or working in your business, and how working in your business, there's never going to be a chance where your business says, hey, don't worry about it. I got it. Go work on, transforming what's happening here. Go work on building the next chapter of your life. Your business is never going to do that. You just have to make a decision to say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to do as much as I could today in this, on this hamster wheel, of my daily schedule. I'm just going to opt out and spend some time investing in something that exists on a higher scale. Until you make that decision, it doesn't happen. I remember years ago, I was watching Robert Kiyosaki, and he's getting a lot of shit these days, but I like Robert Kiyosaki. And he was on Oprah. And this is back in the day when Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out. And a lot of people lose their shit because, it wasn't real. He didn't really. It's a fucking story. Like, get over it. But anyway, he's in Oprah's show. This might have been the 90s or something back in the day. And he was telling, all the women, in the audience, like, yeah, in order to get ahead, in order to get out of the rat race, that's his terminology. He said, you got to save 20%. Every dollar you make, 20 cents goes, and you save that and you wait so you can make an investment or something. And, the women raise their hand, Oprah come over and, well, Robert, I understand what you're saying, but, I have 3 children and we live check to check. I live week to week. I don't have the ability to just take 20% of my check and put it in savings. So what would you say to somebody in my situation? And then he would say, if you're in a situation like that where you're living check to check and you can't really afford the 20%, then what you should do is definitely put 20% away for savings. And everybody's like, what? Like, they're all flipping out. And obviously there's a point, to how he's handling the situation. And the lesson that, was going over many of the audience's head at the time was, it doesn't fucking matter. Opt out of that mindset. You are not trapped. Right? Jim Rohn used to have a great saying. He's like, if you want to move. You're not a tree. Move. Just go somewhere else and do something differently. And I think most people, because they're so trapped in caring about people outside the wall, they allow their identity and the roots of their own relationship with themselves to permeate into relationships with otherwise disconnected people. We see this ramped up, to a pathological level these days. I can't express to you how disgusted I get when I see moms, dads, husbands, and wives online, like trying to make their children famous, or doing these cringy, almost like bad acting type skits, just because they're trying to become famous and popular. Like one of the, I don't know. I don't want to how controversial I want to get right now, but here we go. One of the things about usury, right? Charging interest. I just wrote an email about this the other day, so it's top of mind. Charging interest on loaning somebody money is the problem is that it becomes dysfunctional at a certain point, because you wind up creating individuals who accumulate wealth without ever producing anything, right? So for a society, there's a certain point where it becomes destructive, because people are getting extra money without actually creating any value. They're peddlers of convenience, right? They're people who invest money in bad habits. They're people who don't necessarily independently create value for other people. Well, that's a problem, because over time, no value gets created, and I don't want to get too crazy. Well, there's something to be said for somebody who they only invest their time and energy in entertaining people, with the hopes that the people who are being entertained, or even worse, the person that owns the platform to entertain people, gives them some money for doing it. So, the peddlers of usury benefit and profit without creating any value. But then you have the entertainers who are, again, using their own resources, time, energy, resources, what have you, in hopes of some third-party gatekeeper, like a social media platform, just bestows upon them, the blessing of being able to monetize what it is that they're doing. And, I'm slowly becoming the old cranky guy about these topics, but what it comes down to is, if you are not creating value for you and your family, then what is the motivation for taking the resources, the opportunities you have, the potential that an individual has, and wasting it and discarding it in these different frivolous ways? And the narcissism that results from this type of society is rearing its head in all of the different calamities we're starting to observe. People are becoming more and more dysfunctional. People are becoming more and more disconnected. I've studied persuasion, for over 20 years. And when you understand the psychology of how an individual is malleable, right, and how psychologically you could expose them to certain stimulation over time to sort of change who they are, how they see themselves, how they behave, to greater and lesser degrees, depending on the individual, of course. But, we're not really able to escape our classical conditioning vulnerability, right? The operant conditioning paradigm of how we train dogs is how people are trained also. It just becomes a lot more sophisticated, right? A lot fancier, a lot more complex, but it's still the same thing. So another thing about, developing this disconnection from worrying about or being concerned about or even being interested in the disconnected is that it leaves your bandwidth, your resources, your time capable of being invested in people that are inside the wall, right? So external apathy, the external meaning outside the bounds or the wall of an alliance or your tribe, internally, we're the exact opposite. Internally, we're trying to make ourselves more valuable. We're trying to be able to invest in our people with every opportunity we have. There's a priority, of course. It's got to start with you. But then it becomes, making yourself as strong as you could be so you could bring that strength to the tribe. On the thumbnail for today, I I got some AI, Mid-Journey, and there's a guy there, and he's got like a superhero cape on, and he's got a bunch of arrows that are being directed at him. And the text, on the image is doesn't care, has shit to do. Doesn't care, has shit to do. And this is sort of getting to the point of all this. I don't say that you should be apathetic to people you are disconnected to sort of just develop this sort of apathetic, component of your personality. Like learn how to not care about people. Like, no. Learn to sort of organize your caring for other people, but the driving, right? So if it's like you don't want to be pathologically sympathetic, right, or altruistic, and I'm saying you should instead, you should try and be apathetic. Well, what is the positive that we want to add, right? So being apathetic is more of a removal of a thing. Well, if we're looking to add a thing, well, what is it? And I would say it's a drive towards helping you and your tribe. So on that thumbnail for today, doesn't care, has shit to do. I've said it before, and I'll repeat it here. If somebody is hating on you, as an example, it is a telltale sign that the relationship that they have with themselves includes you. To what extent you have control over that, it might not be much control at all, but you are still a target of a ritual that they've developed to better engage themselves and the relationship they have with themselves. Usually you'll see in arguments that people have, the things that they accuse other people of is usually or the criticisms that they put on is usually a projection of their own, psychology. And it might not be something that necessarily that they're deficient in, but it's certainly something that's top of mind subconsciously for them. The problem with considering other people, disconnected people, when looking to engage our relationship with ourselves is obviously none of these people are invested in our success, in our better outcomes. So to include these people as a variable, right, as a component of the formula that we design our own self-confidence, self-love, we could even say to some extent with, there is a vulnerability because disconnected people have a seat at the table. There are plenty of people who, I'm coaching over the years, I'll have guys say, oh, this fucking guy, my neighbor, my coworker, my business partner, some guys, my wife, like whatever it is, they have this target, right, of their animus, like this person, this person, this person. And they may not articulate it directly, but I know that to some subconscious level, they are saying this person is the architect of these circumstances that I don't want. Because this person is acting the way they're acting or doing what they're doing, I have to be exposed to this. And again, maybe it's not a conscious connection they make, but my whole thing is, and you guys have heard my thing on complaining, where I created a little flow chart, for complaining. The whole thing is we should not be complaining as a form of catharsis beyond our current level of needing to do so, right? I had a program called Second Step Strategies. And second step strategies means I use the example of somebody cutting you off in traffic. Like the first step is like, motherfucker. It's like, okay, that's your subconscious just being exposed. The step after that, the beat and time after that is now one you're aware of. And that's the one where you have to actually act on mission. So, because I'm under no delusions that we're just going to get information and suddenly become different people. Let me tell you, as somebody who's been teaching martial arts for over 20 years, the information alone doesn't fucking do it. There's a process of building a relationship between here and then, not knowing how to do something and knowing how to do it. There's a process. There's a path that needs to be walked by the individual. It's not just information. If I give you a map of a place on how to get to a place, it doesn't give you the experience of being there, right? Let me see some comments here. Aaron writes, speaking of tribe shares from yesterday, just because many crabs share a bucket doesn't make them a tribe. That's right. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that, their friends are betraying them. Their friends are, getting in the way or criticizing them for doing better or just becoming different. And it doesn't have to be better or worse. No value. It's just different. And it's like, right, because they include you in their ability to be themselves. Sometimes when one member of a friend group starts to excel or climb the ladder, it really puts a mirror in front of the other people that they're not interested in looking at. It's just easier to condemn the person who's climbing, right? Which is one of the definitions of weakness that I have. Right? Judge Cohen, what's up, brother, man? See you in a couple of days. That's right. Judge Cohen will be at my Forge Your Cult event. Judge Cohen writes, yes, you become stronger to do the things you need to do for those you need to do them for. That's right. If they have time to hate on you, they need more shit to do. And it's really no more difficult than that. It's no more complex than that. It's like, I wrote on this. I saw this guy wrote something, so I wrote back. Now, mind you, I've done this 1,000 times, right? So please don't ever think that I escape the reaches of my own philosophy and standards, right? So this is like this, it's really the driver for how these things get created is I'm like, yeah, I got to fucking stop doing this, right? Which again, earlier in the talk, that started way back when I was a fucking teenager, right? So I'm somebody who always works on this stuff myself. I can't explain to you, I can't express how much of a fucking maniac I was as a teenager. And where I am right now, like, listen, the werewolf I still have the werewolf inside, right? The werewolf is still in there somewhere, but I have to keep him at bay. I have to train him. I have to domesticate him to some extent, right? A little bit gay language, but you guys understand what I'm saying. But if you ain't got shit to do, then why do you even care what somebody's saying? Why do you even care what this, oh, I hate this fucking guy. I saw him writing, so I had to write. Like, you really have nothing better to do than to have an argument against somebody's position, especially, as it's not always the case, but especially if the expression of that person's position includes preference, meaning there's an aspect of their position that you're never going to agree with because there is some preference embedded in it. It's like, oh, the best way to get in shape is to run. No, it isn't, because running, this is like that. Well, you fucking hate running. I'm talking about myself right now. I fucking hate running. I have all sorts of one-liners about running, about why not to do it. But if I'm criticizing running against a runner in terms of what's more valuable to get in shape, it's like, well, this guy likes running. I hate running. I'm always going to tell somebody to do something that they love doing instead of something they hate doing. Suppose he hated lifting weights, right? Suppose he hated, acting like a man. I hate running. Did I mention that? But the idea is if there's preference involved, then you're never going to fucking agree, is my point. So what the fuck are you doing? Nope, got to have this stranger agree with me on the internet. And if he's not going to agree with me, I at least got to make sure he knows he's wrong. What the fuck should you be doing right now? I remember years ago, I had a back and forth with one of my former fighters, and he had already left and was still bad mouthing me online. And I remember having a conversation with him. This might have been a like message conversation. And I told him, like, I have 4 children. Like, do you realize that every night that I'm training you, I'm not with my kids? Every night that I'm cornering you, I'm not with my kids. Every single time I'm helping you do something, I'm not with my kids. And as, I got more mature as a husband, as a father, there is a point where that was the litmus test for everything. If I do this, it has to be more significant in a way that I can understand than spending that time with my children, with my family, because there's a priority, right? But not everybody could see things that way. So the point of it is, if somebody's really complaining about somebody else, it's like you don't have anything to do right now. You need something productive to do. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you motherfuckers will agree if you think about it, there have been times where you have done something and you've gotten a positive result. And there are plenty of times where instead of doing that thing that generated a positive result, you've spent that time more frivolously arguing with people, either in the real world or on the internet. Meaning you could have just as easily done the bad thing, but there's an instance where you've done a good thing. And there's really not an argument for ever doing the bad instead of the good. There was a time where I was an aggressive debater. And so much of the debating is really, tactically trying to dominate somebody in rhetoric, and it got to the point where I became completely disinterested in even arguing with people because I just don't fucking care. Do what you're going to do. Like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And sometimes it's not easy for somebody to accept that somebody else just doesn't care about their opinion. Well, you have to respect my opinion. Well, no, I respect that you have an opinion. I respect you as an identity, and to not be tyrannical, I allow you to move in your own space. But having a concern for what those beliefs and opinions are, I don't give a fuck. It just doesn't matter to me. I mean, if somebody's like, oh, you got to try this dessert, it's amazing. I'm like, no, I'm good. No, it's really, really good. It's like, do I look like I need to discover a new fucking delicious dessert? I just don't fucking care. I have too many desserts I like to begin with. Get the fuck away from me with that shit. It's an apathy against trying to generate these connections with people that have no overlap with who you are or what your mission is. It's like, oh, this guy was really rude to me. I want to win him over and make him my friend. This is a specific memory I'm thinking of right now. I just want to show him that, and it's like, for what? No, because he thinks I'm a loser. He thinks I'm an like. It's like show me on the doll where the stranger hurt you. It's just insecurity-driven bullshit. Concerning yourself with the opinion of disconnected people is a reflection of just how insecure your relationship with your own mission is. That you're willing to include any fucking schmuck you run into during the course of a day. Now again, there's plenty of times I'll have some bad interaction with somebody at a store or something, and it's like it takes me a while to fucking calm my ass down. Listen, I'm on the fucking path and climbing the ladder just like anybody else. But there's never an argument. for why that needs to be the case. When you look at, the physiology of the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic systems of our body, how we get ready for action, and then how we sort of downshift. It's like you think of Bruce Banner. He becomes the Hulk, but then he comes back to Bruce Banner. Sometimes we turn into the Hulk. We don't know how to turn back into Bruce Banner. So it makes becoming the Hulk a liability. Sometimes it's too easy to turn back and forth. So we become the Hulk a little bit too prematurely. There are a lot of problems that we have that the Bruce Banner of us can fix. We needn't become the Hulk. We want the Hulk there when we need him, but we don't need to become the Hulk all the time. It's just not the way it works. Right? Aaron writes, say that again so I can write it down. When someone is hating on you, they're including you in the relationship they have with themselves. Right? You are a component of the formula that they are running to feel good about themselves. They express this to you so they feel better about themselves. Maybe it's cathartic, maybe it's validation, and there are a lot of different ways that this could, the value to the individual can be determined. But more generally speaking, they need to say something to you in order for them to feel good about them, which is just dysfunctional outside of tribe. Mind you, this is all outside of tribe I'm talking about. Inside the tribe, all bets are off. If somebody doesn't respect me or somebody's criticizing me within tribe, that is something that I have to deal with. We got to figure this shit out. And vice versa. If I see somebody fucking up in my tribe, they're going to hear it from me just the same. But outside of tribe, no, we're not here for that. We're not here for that, right? Once had somebody tell me, it's on the pedophile thing, right? I think pedophiles should be put to death, whatever. I've said that before, but I don't know, just in case it's not allowed on YouTube, fuck it. Let that be the thing my thing gets taken down for. I think they should be, I should take this down. I've said pedophiles should be put to death. Well, I remember having a conversation with somebody who says, yeah, but, even though I think pedophiles should be put to death, some people don't care. Or they even said, I think it was a criticism of me. They were like, oh yeah, because I see you going around hunting pedophiles. I see you and it's like, just don't get it confused. I'm not saying that that's the job that I'm applying for. But to me, it's like, oh, we got this pedophile, who's diddling some kid. What should we do? Throw him off a fucking cliff. If it's that level of ease at which I have to invest myself in this, it's like, yeah, I'm going to say do that. But I remember him saying, that he was implying somehow that I was contradicting myself. I was being inconsistent. And then I asked him, I said, I'm always using pizza shop analogies. And I asked him, have you ever been to a pizza shop? Yeah. Did you do a background check on everybody there? What do you mean? Did you do a background check on everybody? Last time you bought a slice of pizza, did you do a background check on everybody who was working at the pizza shop? Of course not. How do you know one of them wasn't a pedophile? I don't, but it's a fucking pizza. Right. So there's a criteria by which you're not going to continue to pursue to sort of vet everybody that you engage with, because you have to be functional. And that's the thing. You don't want a pedophile in your tribe. If you understand a pedophile exists outside, you don't want to build an alliance with them. But now to take on the logistical burden of having to determine whether somebody's a pedophile before you expose yourself to an alliance becomes dysfunctional. Right? There's, movement is mandatory. There's a point where if we stop moving because of this logistical burden that we put on top of ourselves, we become dysfunctional. What else we got? You are welcome. So let me start summarizing here. If you're an individual who finds yourself getting pissed off by strangers, finds yourself, arguing with strangers on the internet, finds yourself getting into heated debates with people who aren't necessarily improving your position, because there's something to be said for, engaging in conversations that strengthen your positions. But again, those conversations shouldn't be debates. If you're just trying to become a better debater, then you are just as fucking useless as any politician, merchant, or prostitute. You're somebody who is looking to play the word game instead of actually become more valuable in the real world. That's why I'm not interested in debates. It's like, should trannies be allowed to go in the bathrooms? This person says yes. Well, not just bathrooms in general. You know what I mean? The guy in the girls' bathroom, etc. They should be allowed to go to the bathroom. You understand what I'm saying? But it's like somebody says, yeah, a tranny woman, or when it's a guy who says it's a girl, whatever that's called, they want to go into the girl's bathroom. Should that be allowed? No, I don't think that should be allowed. Well, this person says that they should. Do you want to debate them? Debate them about what? Like we have two different positions. It's like a debate is basically a fight. I don't want to fight and argue. What the fuck is the point? If you're saying that this conversation could lead to one of us changing our positions, I'm interested in those conversations. But it's all a sham with most people. They're just looking to validate their own positions. They're looking to have the masses approve these mic drop moments. I'm going to say something, everybody's going to go, oh, like there is a value of that in that, but not in building a relationship with one's own philosophy. It's like those are social dynamics. That's what you use to sort of dominate other people socially. Right? The Donald Trump moment. Well, I'm glad you're not in charge of the Justice Department because you'd be in jail. Oh, like, yeah, it's a fucking presidential race. Like those things help that because it brings people over to one side or the other. It actually has some effect. But if we're talking about a conversation that's based in truth, that the outcome of the conversation isn't going to make anybody more powerful than the tribe or less powerful, like, yeah, I'll have conversations about the truth any day of the week. But debating, being intellectually dishonest just to win an argument, like what the fuck is the point of that? Not much of a point at all, I would say. Jamie writes, the bear doesn't debate one's belief that they have a right to access to its cubs. The bear doesn't give two shits about any of that stuff. And that the allusion to the natural standard is one that I believe we all should start paying attention to. It's like, how does it work in the real world? Remember, as a species, we've already passed the point where we're so smart we're stupid. At some point, I would say at an increasing level, society will continue to think more and more that it is smarter and stronger than nature. And I would say if we ever get to the point where we can control nature completely, like that would be the greatest tragedy of them all. All right, guys, let's end it there. Good talk. I appreciate you guys. As you guys know, in the description, you have everything that I'm doing currently. Those of you that are watching that are going to the Forge Your Cult event this weekend, I will see you then. For the rest of you, I will see you Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate your time always. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.